Welcome everyone to this live stream of yet one of our interviews from EconomyNext, where we are interviewing the movers and shakers, the candidates and the leaders in the campaign. Our idea is to try and get you as much information as possible so that you can make the best choice that is possible. So today we are lucky to have the assistant leader of the United National Party, former cabinet minister, and the leader of the United National Party's Colombo District group, Mr. Ravi Karunanayake. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Arjun, for giving the opportunity.
No problem. So how is the campaign going? And let's start with the big news of the day, where the working committee made a big decision to expel all the members of the UNP who had got nominations from the SJB, or Samagi Jana Balavegaya.
To be frank, it's long overdue, but we wanted to stick to the law, to its letter, and we didn't want to take anything more out of the way because we were dealing with human beings and also people in the party. And they were mentioning various things that were there, so we had to be ultra cautious. And it was they that went to court, and with the first knock on the head by the district court, and after getting that, once they lost the case, they went to the appellate court. And once they got a 25,000 rupee fine, and that sealed their fate, we thought it was timely that we move forward and ensure that we do the needful. And that was getting the people who have been basically recalcitrant in the party.
So what are the repercussions from this? What would happen to them?
Well, it is certainly something which is a fait accompli, because you can't be in two parties. And they were trying to be running with the hare and hunting with the hound. And this was put to a full stop today.
So, but at the same time, what do you hear from on the ground when you go to campaign? Is there confusion? Who's the UNP kind of thing, or is they clear that that you are the UNP and they are? Is it that they are a breakaway group, because they keep on saying that they are the UNP, right?
That's the irony, They seem to be scolding the elephant and hugging the tail of the elephant. That's the insanity part of it. So I guess they were trying to dupe the people, and this has been exposed now because they thought that they could use this as an approach in order to increase their vote bank, not knowing that at the end of the day, United National Party, the oldest party, disciplined and certainly having a visionary approach. So I guess when they had to go to court and they got the necessary answer, all this happened in good time, well before the election, and we thought that a full stop is necessary for this type of duplicate runs.
So, but most people believe that the SJB will probably win more seats than the UNP in this election. What do you think?
Well, I would say that's a hallucination. Each one has their own parochial interest. But here, it was a sense of number game that they were thinking they were. Of course, the people who left the party, Arjuna, was people who lost their electorate so badly during the presidential elections that they were non-starters any case. And this groupage that got together in order to virtually surround the defeat that they had, they made a point that people that are running the UMP were part of the problem for the forward march. So they used that as a benchmark in order to break it and move forward, but not knowing that when you basically do such thing, the United National Party members, they have the party as their second religion. After they profess their own religion, the political party religion is the United National Party and the elephant. So I guess now they are really feeling the real crunch of it now. And I guess the August 5th election would basically be the final finale to this type of game that they played.
But also, most of the sitting members of parliament from the last parliament have gone over to the SJP. Isn't that true?
Yes, that's correct, Arjuna. When I say in number games, yes, but the quality remains here. That's the difference. Because at the end of the day, as I said, the numbers that lost in the elections, we lost by 15 lakhs of votes. That's 1.5 million. And the people that left contributory to almost 13.8 lakhs of votes. So that basically shows the magnitude in the defeatist-oriented people going over. None of the people who won electors went over.
Okay, so how would you, what is your prediction? How much do you think the UNP will get in this election?
Arjuna, we are optimistically looking that we want to form a government of our own, and of course the realities exist. And I mean, but I would direct answer to your question is that we would be looking at getting, say, between anywhere in the range of 70 to 80 seats.
So, for you, apart from this issue coming up with the SJB, what is the main issue you think is before the voters? From the voters' point of view, what is the most important thing that they should be thinking about?
Arjun, even though you basically took time to compare us with the breakaway that you mentioned, our main opposition is the government. That's SLPP. That's where our threat exists, and our threat that exists there happens to be on twofold. One is what we did in the past 5 years compared to what they have done in the 8 months, and this gives an opening as to compare and contrast between what we did and what they are doing. Three areas: the cost of living, which is in 8 months has been unbearable, even though we did such a lot of reduction during that period that we were governing. The secondary is the economy is in tatters. And third is the Sri Lanka is moving away, gendering away from the world itself. So those are the three areas that has to be concentrated. Because the foreign policy should be friends with all, enemies with none. And that approach is what we are going. Now, one thing that we had a startling situation was during the presidential election, we didn't see three factors. One was the youth. The second was the I would say the baseline or the people who are floating voters, and the third one was the educated professional and the urban vote. Now these three seem to be gathering back against the UMP, especially the youth. I mean, we find it strange, but that is the actual situation. There's a lot of hope on the president during the presidential election. But I think they were oversold that, and they see that it's a distant reality from what they said to what they are experiencing. So as a result, we see people coming back, and I hope that's a heartening news for us.
Uh, Thinking about the economy and the performance of the Yahapalana government, uh, your critics say that you mismanaged the economy, that although prices were brought down, taxes were high, there was a depreciation in the rupee, and the budget deficit went up from 5.7 to 7 something. So some would say that the brand that the UNP always had as excellent economic managers was tarnished, or was, some people say, even destroyed. What is your response? Because part of the time you were the finance minister.
If I take out of the 60 months, 33, 34 months, I was in helm of the finance. And I'm sure if you compare the two different times, your answer will get a different answer. The first 3 years that were governing, we had a downtrodden economy that was handed over to us, where the revenues to GDP was roughly 10.4%. That was 1.1 billion was the revenue, when the total expenditure was roughly in the range of 2.6 billion. So 2.6 trillion, I'm sorry. So with that, that was the derelict economy that was handed over to us. So anybody who basically says that the economy was worse than what it was may be unsound in their mind. But let me put that to rest by giving certain example. As I said, revenue was 10.4%. In the first year, we had 36% growth. The second year, it was 41% growth on revenue. And the third year, it roughly was about 34%. So year on year, we basically, during my tenure of the finance ministry, we were able to increase the revenue from 10.4% to almost 15% of GDP. And in that process, what we were able to rationalize the cost, increase the revenue, and ensuring the fiscal space was increased, so that we were able to put into more important areas. Certainly, education got almost about a 2% increase in GDP. The health got about 1.4%. So roughly, you were having the main areas getting the necessary funding that was required. Then, if you look at the devaluation aspect that you mentioned, that was an area which we saw about a 8 to 10% devaluation. But certainly, I must confess that the policy between the government and the central bank was so different at that time that sometimes the monetary policy that is in the hands of the central bank was, to my extent, it was running contrary to the government's policy. We wanted a low interest rate. They were basically standing in the way. We wanted to ensure that the economy is put into area of not consumption but investment oriented. That was not the case. So those were the conflicting things that we basically had impact. And the ramifications you feel into the second lot when Mangala took over. The push that was there was different from what we were doing. So I would certainly say that overall economy was far better than what was handed over. For the first time, we had a primary increase in the primary deficit that was there. So you would know that it was financial management, fiscal improvement, and financial discipline. Those are the three areas that were the hallmark of our governing.
Um, Also, I know you have been on all the TV channels in the past few weeks explaining your position about the bond issue and the bond scam. But it also again that was the only big scam or scandal that your government faced. But that did a lot of damage politically, didn't it, for you? And do you feel responsible for that?
I am the least of the responsible of it. I was the finance minister. It was like where I was not in charge of central bank, because the first finance minister not in charge of the central bank, and also that the commercial banks are not in my charge. And this is a heinous crime to put anything and everything on me. And now people understand. We have been opening it out. Up to this time, we were playing as a team, but I find that it is encroaching into my own credibility. So when you really open it out, the people who made the noise are basically making a noise for absolutely nothing. If you are a person with a discerning mind, what is what is this all about? You're trying to tell something when it is non-existent. What is this bond scam? I mean, if you basically look at it, we have gone, the Prime Minister wanted, instead of private placements, to go into a situation of public auctions. And this has been the problem that created all these godfathers of these private placements and all are today taking things to task when they were the ones who started private placement, which was the disaster, and also it was fixation of the rates. Now, if you really look at today, nobody will trade on bonds if you know that there has been no approvals that have been given for the trading after 2008 January to April, because that was the only time when they wanted uh, approval for a window of 4 months. And since then, they continued this until the situation arose where our government said that we wanted auctions instead of private placement. So you could see how they have converted a storm in a teacup where there was no relevance of anything. And end of the day, it was during the tenure of the first one that they increased the bond from 1 to the 10 billion instead of going through the public auction, which they made such a big noise out of it. And half the creatures that created this were the people within the party, and they made a big noise just for their own political gains. And they were the footnote team that was there. They attacked on one side, defend on the other side, and I guess now they finally feel what a nonsensical approach they adopted. So, end of the day, if you really look at Arjuna, ask him what it is, you'll be stunned with disbelief. That when the forensic report says that for the 2005 to 2015, there has been 11 billion loss that is shown. Here you are saying a notional loss that is shown by the auditor general, who also qualifies saying I am not competent in deciding as to whether they right or wrong. So what are we? We have been just shouting for nothing and character assassinating, and on a voyage of discoveries. Now, I mean, you would know a low interest rate regime is what is ideal for Sri Lanka to spur investment, to spur self-employment, even reduction of cost, etc. But here it is, you are having some people that shouting around, why is it low interest instead of high interest? I mean, this type of stupidity also exists.
Um, did at any stage, as a way out and to settle the issue, did you ever discuss within the cabinet, or you and the PM, or the other ministers who were involved in the Economic Council, did you discuss the possibility of removing Mr. Arjuna Mahendran from his position?
Yes, there were many instances that were there, and when it was the time when they were to be reappointed, I think it was a mix of all. Even the then president also was very insistent that he didn't want to appoint. So finally, it was a situation that the additional extension was not granted.
But in the initial stages, where there is the Mr. Aloysius's case now, of course, that is before the courts. So, but because he was a trader, and because he owned a trading company, and his father-in-law was the head of the bank, central bank, wasn't there a conflict of interest? I mean, would he have to divorce himself completely from the business if he were to continue as a trader?
Well, in hindsight, certainly it should have been. And of course, I guess that particular thing should be looked at from where it is. If I try to answer or defend, I think I will basically be siding on either side. So the best thing is that you would see at the end of the day, it's a storm in a teacup. And
Yes.
look, this particular primary leadership was obtained during Nivad Kabra's time. And Niwad's sister was there. I mean, I have no fault in any of those. But the noise that is being made subsequent by the people that basically know nothing about it is the sadness of all of this. Now, Greek bonds, you lost 5.5 billion. That is lost and written off the accounts on the books. Here it's only a notional entry, which could be, which could not be. And you make such a noise of it. I don't understand the duplicity in this type of approach. Now, the forensic report says 11.5 billion loss. That's done and dusted. You have Greek bonds, 6.5 billion, done and dusted. But here it is only a contemplation of a hypothetical situation. And that is where you see absolute naivety that goes on.
To move on, if there is a situation where the one party, maybe say theoretically we'll say the SLPP, does not get the majority that they want, would you consider joining a national government if required?
We are of the opinion that we will form our own government, and there's no necessity of hooking on to anybody else, because this gives the wrong connotation. And certainly we don't want to, last time we mentioned of a national economy, and it was regarded as a national government, and that had its own impact. So we are very cautious of this approach, and we are of the opinion that we would form our own government, because within this 8 months you would see the economic disparity and the cost of living increase and the isolation of Sri Lanka from the world.
The party has selected people or chosen people to contest who are very different from your regular UNP candidates, Ajanta Pereira, Mr. Sem Mohammed, people like that, people who are active in other fields. Was that a conscious policy decision, or is it
policy by leader Ranil Wickremesinghe and myself as the deputy leader, as the assistant leader, where we basically looked at where we had outflow and we wanted to have the inflow better than the outflow. And certainly it is a very balanced, professional team that is there. And you could see that we are making an impact in Colombo. Like a tree, you have leaves falling, but the next leaves that come are better than what has fallen. So with the balance of the experience and the new faces that are there, I certainly feel that Colombo has a very well balanced team.
What would your hope for the UNP be? Are you hopeful that the people who are now with the JB would come back someday, or you think that the break is final?
Well, I think the break would be final because the full stop would be received from the people on the 5th of August. The most vocal critics that are there who basically got the best of UMP and thought that this will be a bit of a chivalry approach of taking the UMP on, that they can get the vote onto them, garner the vote into themselves, has sadly found that that is not what the general voter is. The voter would feel disenchanted that certain things of the UMP did not happen, would not happen, could not happen, etc. But end of the day, they have a conscience that this is the UMP, this is not just a fly-by-night, three-wheeler party that is, taking them by stealth, in a stealthy mean. And look at the statement that come out of, person who is basically apparently Tokyo leading, he is not fit to even run a local council.
You talked about the youth vote earlier, and it is true that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa got a big chunk of the youth vote during the presidential election. And now you are saying that they are disillusioned, that they are upset with what's happening. So what is your message to the youth? What are you trying to tell them?
Our message is that we certainly can do far better than what's been done. And we have targeted the people, youth, in the manner that we have said that we would ensure that we invest in their intrinsic skills where they may not have the financial ability, where we'll give them 10,000 rupees a month until and such time they have found a job. Now, this is the most difficult thing these days, because owing to the post-COVID, all the problems are put on them. And they say the economy is stagnated owing to this fact. So we need to be innovative, we need to be revolutionary, we need to be thinking outside the box. And that's the best way to take the youth to a different tomorrow. So we are investing in that approach by taking the pressure off the parents who are already having a hard time economically surviving, getting the children to stand on their own feet, and ensuring we give until and such time that they get a job. And that is the approach that we are basically thinking of attracting or rekindling the hope of the youth. While also showing that the way forward, it's just words don't mean anything, figures don't mean anything. You've got to put pen to paper, or you've got to put the practical essence into that. What we basically want is to ensure that we have a manufacturing and export process rather than import and trade. Now that would basically give the jobs that are required, and it will reboot the entire economy to take it to the desired goal that we are wanting. And the next thing that we want to do is to show that it has a backward forward integration. The GDP, in the three components that are there, service industry has been affected badly with tourism, the financial sectors, etc. But while emphasizing the importance of that, we want to hook on to the innovative approach or the new skills of the agriculture, which we import 85 billion a year, to be looked at as import substitution. There's no rocket science to have the agriculture goods coming in when it's such a fertile soil that we have. And it is unthinkable to think that we are still importing and, keeping the agriculture tab on. So that's the approach that we are basically thinking of taking forward. We get the improvement on the service sector, then we have the agriculture revolution rise, and through that we have the industrial revolution taking place, because what is the equipment required for the agriculture industry would be basically looked at Sri Lanka grown. So that's a quick approach that we want to take it for.
So you're sort of supportive of the kind of import restrictions that this government has imposed.
No, I'm sorry, that's completely wrong.
Yes,
Import restrictions, because they have no other thing, no other process of coming out. What we are import restrictions is import substitution.
Okay.
We want to ensure that the goods that are imported are manufactured or grown locally. Now, there's no rocket science. 3 to 4 months is the harvesting time, and you don't need to waste time on importing potatoes, onions, chilies, sugar, etc., which are domestically can be easily grown and harvested.
So that's because there are clearly two roads that you can take to pull us out of COVID, right? One would be to join the international community, get their help, and open up our economy as it was, or to go sink into a situation where you're only looking inwards. So your approach would be outward.
That's correct. But what we want to do is to integrate Sri Lanka into the world, actually, because there's no point being like a frog in a well, where the market access has to be there. The Sri Lankan market access is insufficient. And if you want to have the manufacturing that is competitive, You've got to go into the global world. That is why I have been fighting the central bank to have a single digit interest rate. You can't be having 16, 17 percent interest rate and try to compete with the region. Whether it's India or Bangladesh or Pakistan or Afghanistan or Maldives, all of them have 4 to 5% interest rate. So how can Sri Lanka have 16 and compete with them? Your very essence of bank interest rates alone is you're losing your profit margin. So this is where you basically have lost the wood from the trees. And this is where the problem lies.
So thank you so much for joining us. I know it's a really busy day for you. You have had such a packed morning, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your time.
Would love to see Sri Lanka being, taking the tab of being great again. And it's not that whether we can develop the country or not, whether we want to develop the country or not. And that's where we have got to have a new approach, new innovative thinking, and also ensure that the team that is there with experience, rather than elbowed team that is basically taking, hammering all over.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.